She'd breezed on back into town in a candy apple Corvette when Lark's oldest sister, Avery, was born, after spending Mary's entire childhood off on some adventure or another, while Lark's grandfather had done the raising of the kids. Grandkids had settled her, and Mary had never withheld her children from Adeline. Whatever Mary thought about her mom was difficult to say, but then Lark could never really read her mom's emotions. When she'd been a kid, she hadn't noticed that. Lark had gone around feeling whatever she did and assuming everyone was tracking right along with her because she'd been an innately self-focused kid. Or maybe that was just kids. Either way, back then badgering her mom into tea parties and talking her ear off without noticing Mary didn't do much of her own talking had been easy. It was only when she'd had big things to share with her mom that she'd realized she couldn't. "It's easy, Mom," Lark said. "I'll teach you. No one is asking you to make a living with art. Art can be about enjoying the process." "I don't enjoy doing things I'm bad at." "Well, I don't want Graham stuff going to a thrift store, okay?" Another shift in Mary's expression. A single crease on one side of her mouth conveying irritation, reluctance, and exhaustion. But when she spoke, she was measured. "If that's what you want, this is as much yours as mine." It was a four-way split. The Dowell house and all its contents, and the miner's house, formerly her grandmother's candy shop, to Mary Ashwood and her 3 daughters. They'd discovered that at the will reading 2 months earlier. It hadn't caused any issues in the family. They just weren't like that. Lark's Uncle Bill had just shaken his head. "She feels guilty." And that had been the end of any discussion, before any had really started. They were all like their father that way. Quiet, reserved, opinionated, and expert at conveying it without saying much. Big, loud shouting matches didn't have a place in the Dowell family. But Addie had been there for her boys. They were quite a bit older than Lark's mother. She'd left when the oldest had been 18, the youngest boy 16. Mary had been 4. Lark knew her mom felt more at home in the middle of a group of men than she did with women. She'd been raised in a house of men, with burned dinners and repressed emotions. Lark had always felt like her mother had never really known what to make of the overwhelmingly female household she'd ended up with. "It's what I want. When is Hannah getting in tonight?" Hannah, the middle child, had moved to Boston right after college, getting a position in the Boston Symphony Orchestra. She had the summer off of concerts and had decided to come to Bear Creek to finalize the plans for their inherited properties before going back home. Once Hannah had found out when she could get time away from the symphony, Lark had set her own plans for moving into motion. She wanted to be here the whole time Hannah was here, since for Hannah this wouldn't be permanent. But Lark wasn't going back home. If her family agreed to her plan, she was staying here, which was not something she'd ever imagined she'd do. Lark had gone to college across the country, in New York at 18, and had spent years living everywhere but here, finding new versions of herself in new towns, new cities, whenever the urge took her. Unfinished. Sometime around 5-ish, she said she'd get a car out here from the airport. I reminded her that isn't the easiest thing to do in this part of the world. She said something about it being in apps now. I didn't laugh at her. Lark laughed, though. She can rent a car. Lark hadn't lived in Bear Creek since she was 18, but she hadn't been under the impression there was a surplus of ride services around the small, rural community. If you were flying to get to Bear Creek, you had to fly into Medford, which was about 18 miles from the smaller town. Even if you could find a car, she doubted the driver would want to haul anyone out of town. But her sister wouldn't be told anything. Hannah made her own way, something Lark could relate to. But while she imagined herself drifting along like a tumbleweed,